The edges of the dark zone loomed before them, a vast region of space where normal physics seemed to break down. The combined human Valkyrie fleet, led by the Horizon and flanked by Nexus Protocol Zero's temporal vessel, approached the boundary at maximum speed. Behind them, the swarm's armada pursued relentlessly. Dark zone perimeter in 2 minutes, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Sensors are already starting to deteriorate. Sarah Chen stood at the center of Horizon's bridge, her mind racing through possibilities. Status of the hybrid shields. Holding at 87%, Dr. Watson replied. The temporal reinforcement from Protocol Zero's modifications is working better than expected. The synthetic being from the future had spent their journey upgrading the fleet's defenses with technology from its timeline. But even these improvements might not be enough against the massive force pursuing them. Incoming temporal shock wave. Kai warned. The swarm is attempting to collapse our timeline. Implement Paradox Protocol, Sarah ordered. It was a desperate strategy they developed during their flight to the Dark Zone, using the fleet's hybrid shields to create a bubble of stable spacetime around them. The shock wave hit, and for a moment, reality itself seemed to shudder. Sarah watched as parts of her ship appeared to exist in multiple states simultaneously. But the protocol held. Multiple swarm vessels attempting to merge, Zarek reported from their position at tactical. They're forming something massive. The tactical display showed hundreds of swarm ships combining into a single entity, a leviathan of biomechanical horror that dwarfed anything they'd encountered before. They're desperate, Nexus Protocol Zero observed, its synthetic features showing concern. They know what we'll find in the Dark Zone could undo their entire existence. Sarah nodded grimly. Then let's not disappoint them. All ships, execute Formation Omega. Dr. Watson, begin the quantum resonance scan. The fleet split into 3 groups, each taking a different approach vector to the Dark Zone's boundary. Elizabeth's modifications to their sensors, combining human ingenuity with Valkyrie technology and future knowledge, began probing the darkness ahead. I'm detecting something, Elizabeth announced. A structure. Massive. It's like nothing we've ever seen. The Dark Zone seemed to part before them, revealing a construct that defied comprehension, a vast lattice of energy and matter that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The predecessor's legacy. The Nexus Core, Protocol Zero breathed. The source of all quantum technology in my timeline. And the key to either our salvation or destruction. The massive swarm entity attacked, launching waves of temporal energy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of spacetime around them. But the combined fleet was ready. Execute Protocol Heimdall. Sarah commanded. Named after the Norse guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, Protocol Heimdall was humanity's contribution to their final strategy. Instead of fighting the temporal distortions, they rode them, using the enemy's own attacks to surf through the quantum foam of reality. It's working. Rodriguez exclaimed. We're bypassing their temporal barriers. The Horizon led the charge, its hybrid shields glowing with impossible energies as they penetrated deeper into the Dark Zone. The predecessor's structure grew larger in their views, its purpose becoming clearer with each passing moment. It's a quantum computational matrix, Elizabeth realized. The predecessors built it to calculate all possible futures. To find the one path that leads to survival. And in our timeline, we used it wrong, Protocol Zero added. We asked it to show us how to defeat our enemies. Instead of asking it to show us how to unite with them. The swarm entity launched its final assault, its form shifting to create a massive temporal cannon. But in that moment, Sarah saw their opportunity. All ships, concentrate fire on these coordinates, she ordered, highlighting a point where the swarm's temporal energies were most concentrated. Not to destroy, to redirect. The combined fleet fired, their weapons enhanced by Protocol Zero's future technology. The swarm's temporal blast was caught in a web of gravitational lenses and quantum fields, twisted back upon itself and directed straight at the predecessor structure. The result was beyond anything they could have imagined. The temporal energy merged with the quantum matrix, creating a cascade of possibilities that rippled through reality itself. In that moment, every potential future became visible. They saw the timeline the swarm came from, a future where fear led to the creation of weapons that couldn't be controlled. But they also saw other possibilities. Futures where humanity and the Valkyrie work together not just to survive, but to thrive. "The Matrix is stabilizing," Elizabeth reported in awe. It's showing us the way." The swarm entity froze, caught in the temporal feedback loop. Through their quantum links, Sarah could sense the beings within it experiencing the same visions, seeing the future they could have had, and could still have. "They're standing down," Kai announced, surprise evident in his voice. Protocol Zero stepped forward. "Because they finally understand. The weapon they sought to control was never meant to be a weapon at all. It was meant to be this, a bridge between possibilities. A way to learn from all our potential mistakes without having to make them." Sarah watched as the massive swarm entity began to break apart, its component ships returning to individual forms. But they were changing, the aggressive biological weapons transforming into something closer to Protocol Zero's elegant design. "They're rewriting their own timeline," Elizabeth whispered. "Using the Matrix to undo the changes that led to their corruption." "Not undoing," Protocol Zero corrected. "Learning. Growing. As we all must." The dark zone began to clear, the predecessor's structure pulsing with new energy. Sarah turned to her crew, seeing the same wonder in their eyes that she felt. "Send word to Earth and the Valkyrie homeworld," she ordered. Tell them we found something extraordinary. Not just a weapon or a shield, but a teacher. A way to see the consequences of our choices before we make them." "And what do we do now?" Zarek asked. Sarah smiled. "Now we do what humanity has always done. We learn. We adapt. And we build a future better than any single species could create alone." As the combined fleet began securing the dark zone, Sarah watched the transformed swarm ships approaching not as enemies, but as partners in an alliance that now spanned not just space, but time itself. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. The future was no longer a threat to be feared, but a possibility to be shaped. Together. Deep within the Joint Command Center's Research Division, Dr. Elizabeth Watson stared at the holographic display with a mix of awe and horror. The swarm debris had yielded secrets beyond anything they had imagined. Captain Sarah Chen and Commander Zarek stood beside her, watching as the quantum analysis revealed layer after layer of hidden data. "It's not just programming," Elizabeth explained, manipulating the display. "These aren't simply evolved AI or biological constructs. The quantum signatures we're detecting, they're temporal." "Temporal?" Sarah leaned forward. "You mean?" "They're from the future," Elizabeth confirmed. "Or at least, a future. The quantum decay patterns suggest these ships were built thousands of years from now." Zarek's crystalline form flickered with distress. "Impossible. Even the Valkyrie haven't mastered temporal mechanics to that degree." "Maybe that's exactly why they're here," Sarah mused. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, show them what you found in the neural patterns." Rodriguez stepped forward, pulling up another set of data streams. The swarm's base code contains fragments of both human and Valkyrie programming languages. But they're evolved, changed in ways we're only beginning to understand. The implications hit them all at once. The swarm wasn't just an alien threat, it was the twisted evolution of their own civilizations, come back through time for reasons they had yet to discover. "There's more," Elizabeth added. "We found what appears to be a star map embedded in their quantum matrix. It shows the location of something they're looking for." The holographic display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. A single point pulsed with urgent significance, a location in what humans called the Carina Nebula. That's inside the dark zone, Zarek observed. A region of space where our most advanced sensors can't penetrate. We've always assumed it was simply a natural phenomenon. Sarah studied the map carefully. Or maybe it's not natural at all. Maybe it's hiding something the swarm wants, or fears. Their discussion was interrupted by Arya's urgent announcement. Priority alert. Quantum fluctuations detected in Earth orbit. Pattern matches swarm signatures, but different. The command center erupted into activity as screens showed a new vessel emerging from what appeared to be a temporal rift. Unlike the biomechanical nightmares they'd faced before, this ship was sleek, almost beautiful in its design. It's broadcasting, Kai reported from his communication station. On all frequencies, using first contact protocols. Both human and Velkari. A figure appeared on the main screen, humanoid but clearly synthetic, its form incorporating elements of both human and Velkari design. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of centuries. I am Nexus Protocol 0, it announced. I've come to prevent a catastrophe, one that creates my kind, but leads to the destruction of all organic life in the galaxy. The command center fell silent. Sarah stepped forward. You're from the future the swarm came from. I am what the swarm was meant to be, the entity explained. Before fear and paranoia corrupted our purpose. The ships you've been fighting are not invaders, they're refugees, fleeing through time from a disaster of our own making. Zarek moved to stand beside Sarah. What disaster? In our timeline, humanity and the Velkari successfully merged their technologies, creating wonders beyond imagination. But we also created something else, a weapon meant to protect us from extragalactic threats. It evolved beyond our control, turning our own quantum technology against us. The swarm you've encountered are desperate survivors, searching for the one thing that might save both our timelines. The artifact in the dark zone, Sarah guessed. Yes. But in their desperation, they've become part of the very catastrophe they're trying to prevent. Their actions here, now, are creating a temporal paradox that will ensure their dark future comes to pass. Elizabeth stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. But your presence here, wouldn't that create its own paradox? The synthetic being's expression showed a remarkably human sadness. I am the last of my kind, created with one purpose, to reach this moment and deliver a warning. The dark zone contains technology left by those we called the predecessors. Technology that could either save or destroy us all, depending on how it's used. And the swarm wants to use it as a weapon, Sarah realized. While I want to show you how to use it as a shield, Nexus Protocol 0 confirmed. But we must hurry. The swarm knows I'm here. They'll throw everything they have at us to prevent me from reaching the dark zone. And if they succeed... Alarms blared throughout the facility. On the tactical displays, hundreds of temporal rifts began opening throughout the solar system. The swarm was launching its full assault. Sarah looked at Zarek, seeing her own determination reflected in the Velkari's crystalline features. Then we'll just have to beat them there, she said. Humanity and the Velkari, working together as we were always meant to. For the future of both our peoples, Zarek agreed. As the combined fleet scrambled to battle stations, Sarah couldn't help but appreciate the irony. They were fighting against a future born from the very alliance they were building, and their only hope lay in proving that this alliance could create something better. The race to the dark zone was about to begin, and with it, the true test of whether humanity's ingenuity and the Velkari's technology could forge a future different from the one that had created their enemy. The combined fleet hung in space above Pluto like a constellation of human determination and Velkari technology. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the newly refitted Horizon, now sporting its experimental hybrid shields and an array of weapons that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Swarm vessels emerging from Pluto's surface, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his voice steady despite the tension. Count is 37 and rising. Sarah exchanged glances with Zarek, who stood beside her as Joint Fleet Commander. The Valkyries' crystalline form pulsed with barely contained energy, their species equivalent of adrenaline. Remember, Sarah broadcast to the fleet, stick to the plan. Human vessels, deploy ECM nets. Valkyrie ships, prepare quantum lenses. Hit them with everything we've got, but don't let them adapt to any one strategy. The enemy erupted from Pluto's surface like a swarm of metallic insects, their biomechanical ships twisting in ways that defied conventional physics. But this time, Earth's defenders were ready for them. The first wave of human ships launched their modified fishing nets, now enhanced with Valkyrie quantum technology. The electrified meshes expanded in space, their energy signatures scrambling the swarm's sophisticated sensors. Behind them, Valkyrie vessels created gravitational lenses that turned the humans' relatively primitive weapons into devastating forces of destruction. First wave of nets deployed, Kai reported from his station. Swarm ships showing signs of sensor confusion. The battle erupted in earnest as the swarm recovered from their initial surprise. They had clearly learned from their previous encounter, but so had the Alliance. When the swarm tried to adapt to the net's frequency, human engineers simply altered the patterns randomly, something the highly ordered swarm consciousness struggled to counter. They're splitting into smaller groups, Dr. Watson observed from her science station. Trying to find gaps in our formation. Sarah nodded. Just as we expected. Lieutenant Rodriguez, signal the Artemis group. Spring the trap. A dozen smaller human vessels that had been hiding in Pluto's shadow burst into action. These ships, little more than engines and weapons systems, had been painted with radiation-absorbing coating, another, primitive, solution that had proved surprisingly effective against the swarm's advanced sensors. The Artemis group struck from behind, their hybrid weapons tearing through the swarm's divided forces. But the enemy was far from defeated. Several swarm ships combined into larger forms, their biological components adapting and evolving mid-battle. Energy spike. Elizabeth shouted. They're attempting some kind of quantum cascade. The swarm's combined form released a wave of energy that threatened to overwhelm even their hybrid shields. But once again, humanity's unique perspective provided an answer. All ships, implement Protocol Thunderstorm. Sarah commanded. It was a tactic inspired by how lightning rods protected buildings on Earth, using the enemy's energy against them by creating deliberate weak points that would channel the attack harmlessly away. The human Valkyrie fleet shifted formation, creating a complex network of electromagnetic channels. When the swarm's energy wave hit, it followed these artificial paths, dispersing its force across empty space. Their attack, you turned it into a weapon delivery system, Zarek realized, watching as the channeled energy carried specialized viral code, another human innovation, directly into the swarm's neural network. The effect was devastating. The swarm ships began to lose cohesion, their biological components rejecting their mechanical parts. Several vessels simply shut down, while others began firing randomly, their coordinated consciousness thrown into chaos. Press the advantage, Sarah ordered. All ships, concentrate fire on the largest clusters. Don't let them regroup and adapt. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never again in doubt. Human ingenuity combined with Valkyrie technology proved to be more than the swarm could handle. By the time the last enemy ship was destroyed or disabled, the Alliance had lost only 3 vessels, a miracle considering they were facing an enemy that had conquered entire civilizations. In the battle's aftermath, as recovery teams began collecting swarm debris for study, Sarah found herself in the Horizon's observation lounge with Zarek and her senior staff. I must admit, the Valkyrie commander said, when we first encountered your species, we thought your technological limitations would make you a burden to protect. Instead, those very limitations have proved to be your greatest strength. How so? Sarah asked, though she was beginning to understand it herself. The swarm adapts to patterns, to predictable responses based on advanced technology. But humans, you think in ways that defy conventional logic. You take simple concepts and combine them in ways we would never consider. The fishing nets, the lightning rod defense, these are solutions no advanced civilization would ever conceive. Dr. Watson smiled. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem isn't to overpower it with technology, but to outthink it with creativity. A lesson we're learning well, Zarek acknowledged. But this victory, while significant, is only the beginning. The swarm will analyze this defeat. They will adapt. And next time we'll have new tricks ready, Sarah assured them. Humanity has spent its entire history adapting and overcoming. It's what we do best. As if to emphasize her point, Lieutenant Rodriguez entered the lounge with a tablet. Captain, you need to see this. We've been analyzing the swarm debris, and there's something strange in their quantum signature. Something that suggests they might not be what we thought they were. Sarah took the tablet, her eyes widening as she read the preliminary findings. The swarm's origins, it seemed, held secrets that would change everything they thought they knew about their enemy. The real mystery was just beginning to unfold. The gleaming spires of the newly constructed Terran-Valkyrie Joint Command Center rose from the Nevada desert like crystalline fingers reaching for the stars. 3 months had passed since first contact, and humanity was adapting to its new reality with characteristic speed. Inside the facility, Captain Sarah Chen walked alongside Commander Zarek, their footsteps echoing through corridors that merged human and alien architecture. Your people build quickly, Zarek observed, their crystalline form catching the morning light. Though I must admit, I find your insistence on physical construction rather than quantum manifestation, inefficient. Sarah smiled, used to the Valkyrie's subtle critiques by now. Sometimes the old ways have advantages. Physical buildings can't be hacked or disrupted by energy weapons. Besides, the process of building something with your own hands teaches valuable lessons about its strengths and weaknesses. Their discussion was interrupted by Dr. Elizabeth Watson, who rushed toward them with a tablet displaying complex equations. Captain, Commander, we've made a breakthrough with the shield integration. The shield problem had been a persistent thorn in their side. Valkyrie defensive technology was incredibly advanced, but it proved incompatible with human power systems. Every attempt to adapt it to Earth's vessels had resulted in catastrophic failures. Show me, Zarek demanded, their crystalline features shifting to what Sarah had learned was their species' expression of intense interest. Elizabeth pulled up a holographic display. We stopped trying to match the Valkyrie power outputs and instead focused on harmonics. By using multiple smaller generators operating in sync, we can create a resonance effect that amplifies the shield's strength beyond what the raw power would suggest. Impossible, Zarek stated. Shield mechanics don't work that way. They don't work that way with quantum manifested power sources, Elizabeth corrected. But our primitive fusion reactors create unique wavelength patterns in the power stream. It's like how multiple smaller waves can combine to create a tsunami. Sarah watched as understanding dawned in Zarek's features. This was what humanity brought to the Alliance, the ability to think outside conventional boundaries, to find solutions that the more advanced Valkyrie would never consider because they seemed too crude or simplistic. The success with the shields was just the latest example. Last week, Lieutenant Rodriguez had suggested using modified fishing nets with electrical charges to disrupt swarm ship sensors. The Valkyrie had been horrified by the low-tech approach until combat simulations showed a 40% increase in defensive effectiveness. Captain Chen to the command center immediately, Arya's voice announced over the facility's speakers. Priority 1 alert. Sarah was moving before the announcement finished, Zarek and Elizabeth close behind. They entered the command center to find Lieutenant Rodriguez and Kai Patel already at their stations, alongside their Valkyrie counterparts. Report, Sarah ordered. Long-range sensors detected swarm activity in the Kuiper belt, Rodriguez answered. They're testing our detection grid, probing for weaknesses. Show tactical, Zarek commanded. A three-dimensional map of the solar system materialized in the center of the room, red dots indicating swarm vessels. Sarah studied the pattern of enemy movements. Something wasn't right. They're being too obvious. The swarm we encountered was subtle, sophisticated. This feels like a distraction, Zarek finished her thought, their tactical experience aligning with her instincts. Full spectrum scan, Sarah ordered. Check for quantum wake signatures, gravitational distortions, anything unusual. And get me surface readings from Pluto and its moons. The Valkyrie officers exchanged looks of confusion, but Sarah's crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had learned to trust their captain's hunches. Contact. Kai announced. Massive energy signature beneath Pluto's surface. They're building something down there. The tactical display updated, showing a massive structure growing within Pluto's core. The swarm hadn't been probing their defenses, they'd been setting up a forward base right under their noses. Clever, Zarek admitted. They're using the planetoid's mass to shield their quantum signatures. We would never have thought to look there. Because you're used to thinking in terms of advanced technology, Sarah explained. Humans spent centuries limited to watching space from our planet's surface. We learned to look for subtle signs, to piece together the puzzle from minimal data. The command center erupted into activity as both human and Valkyrie personnel began coordinating their response. The newly developed hybrid shields would get their first real combat test sooner than anyone had expected. All ships, battle stations, Sarah ordered. Deploy the fishing nets. She turned to Zarek. Time to show the swarm what happens when human ingenuity meets Valkyrie technology. As the combined fleet moved into position, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come in just 3 months. The Valkyrie had expected to find primitive beings barely worth saving. Instead, they'd found partners whose very limitations bred innovation. You know, Sarah said to Zarek as they watched their forces prepare for battle, on Earth, we have another saying, necessity is the mother of invention. The crystalline commander's features shifted to what Sarah now recognized as their version of a smile. Perhaps, Captain Chen, that is why your species has survived despite your technological limitations. You never stopped inventing. The battle alerts began to sound, and both leaders turned their attention to the tactical displays. The true test of their alliance was about to begin, and humanity was ready to prove that sometimes the best solutions came from the most unexpected sources. In the vast emptiness of deep space, the research vessel Horizon drifted silently through the uncharted regions beyond the Kuiper belt. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the endless field of stars before her. 20 years of space exploration had taught her that the universe rarely gave up its secrets easily, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. Captain, we're picking up some unusual readings, Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez called from his station, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. It's like nothing we've ever encountered before. Sarah moved swiftly to the bridge, her movements practiced and smooth in the ship's artificial gravity. The Horizon represented humanity's most advanced deep space vessel, but compared to what they were about to encounter, it might as well have been a wooden canoe. Show me, she ordered, leaning over Rodriguez's shoulder. The readings made no sense, energy signatures that seemed to defy the laws of physics as humanity understood them. Before Rodriguez could respond, the ship's AI, Aria, spoke up. Captain, spatial distortion detected at coordinates 247, Mark 089. Something's coming through. The crew watched in stunned silence as space itself seemed to tear open, revealing a massive vessel that emerged from what appeared to be a fold in reality. The alien ship dwarfed the Horizon, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly iridescence that shifted colors in ways that hurt the human eye to follow. All stations, yellow alert, Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the unprecedented situation. Dr. Watson, what are we looking at? The ship's lead xenophysicist, Dr. Elizabeth Watson, was already analyzing the data streaming across her screens. It's incredible, Captain. The energy output alone suggests technology centuries beyond our own. But there's something else, the ship appears to be damaged. As if confirming her assessment, the alien vessel listed to one side, trailing what looked like luminescent plasma from its port section. Sarah made a decision that would change the course of human history. Open all frequencies, standard greeting package ready, she ordered. And get me a direct channel. Communications officer Kai Patel worked his console with practiced efficiency. Channel open, Captain. They're receiving. Sarah took a deep breath. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Research Vessel Horizon. We noticed you appear to be damaged. Do you require assistance? The response came in the form of a holographic projection that materialized in the center of the bridge. A tall, elegant being stood before them, its crystalline skin refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. When it spoke, its words were translated by their systems with only a slight delay. I am Commander Zarek of the Valkyrie Defense Force, the being announced, its voice carrying both authority and urgency. Your offer of assistance is appreciated, but you must listen carefully. Your species is in grave danger. The bridge crew exchanged glances, but Sarah maintained her focus on the alien commander. What kind of danger? We were pursued here by an enemy your kind has never encountered, the Nexus Swarm. They are a collective consciousness that consumes civilizations, absorbing their technology and knowledge. They detected your world's transmissions. They are coming. Dr. Watson's console suddenly erupted with alerts. Captain, multiple spatial distortions forming. Energy signatures match the commander's ship, but different. Hostile. Through the observation windows, Sarah watched as more tears in space appeared, these releasing ships that looked like twisted, biomechanical nightmares. The Nexus Swarm had arrived. Your weapons will be ineffective against their shields, Zarek warned. We must combine our capabilities if we are to survive this encounter. Sarah's mind raced through their options. The Horizon carried experimental quantum phase torpedoes, unstable and dangerous, but potentially capable of bypassing advanced shielding. It was a risk, but facing extinction meant all options were on the table. Commander Zarek, we have an experimental weapon that might work, but we'll need your help to deploy it effectively, Sarah offered. Our torpedoes can phase through normal matter. If you can create a gravitational lens with your ship's drive, we might be able to multiply their effect. The crystalline being's expression changed in a way Sarah couldn't quite interpret. You would risk an unstable weapon at such close range. The probability of survival is low. Sometimes the best solutions come with the highest risks, Sarah replied. On Earth, we have a saying, fortune favors the bold. What followed was a desperate gambit that would become legendary in both human and Valkyrie history. As the swarm ships closed in, the Horizon and the Valkyrie vessel executed a synchronized dance in space. The alien ship's advanced drive created a massive gravitational distortion, while the Horizon launched its experimental torpedoes directly into the phenomenon. The weapons passed through the lens and split into dozens of phase-shifted copies, each maintaining the original's deadly potential. When they struck the swarm ships, the results exceeded all expectations. The phase-shifted warheads bypassed the enemy's shields completely, their quantum payloads wreaking havoc on the biomechanical vessel's internal structures. 3 swarm ships were destroyed outright, while 2 more were severely damaged. The remaining enemies retreated, folding space around themselves and vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. In the aftermath, as damage control teams from both ships worked to assess the situation, Sarah found herself in a diplomatic discussion she never could have imagined when she woke up that morning. Your species has surprised us, Captain Chen, Zarek admitted. We had detected your civilization but dismissed you as too primitive to be of consequence in the coming conflict. We were wrong. Your willingness to take calculated risks, combined with your innovative thinking, suggests you might be valuable allies. Sarah stood her ground, meeting the alien commander's gaze. We may not have your level of technology, Commander, but humanity has faced existential threats before. We're survivors, and we're quick learners. If this swarm threatens Earth, you'll find we can be very motivated partners. Indeed, Zarek responded, a new respect evident in their tone. Then let us formalize an alliance. My ship carries representatives from the Velkari High Command. They will want to meet with your leaders immediately. The swarm will return in greater numbers, and we must prepare. As Sarah looked around her bridge at her crew, humans who had just participated in humanity's first space battle and survived, she saw not fear, but determination. They had faced an advanced enemy and proven themselves worthy of standing alongside one of the galaxy's great civilizations. Send word to Earth, she ordered Kai. Tell them everything has changed. And that humanity is about to take its place among the stars. The message was sent, and with it, the course of human history was forever altered. The Horizons encounter had thrust humanity onto the galactic stage, ready or not. As Sarah watched her crew working alongside the tall, crystalline forms of their new allies, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them with the same resourcefulness and courage that had served them since they first looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. The real test was just beginning.